First question, phone turned off. What's up, Khaled here from Mississauga.com, and I'm here for Quiz the Maestro Part 2 with the man with the best last name in the business, Dennis Mastromonaco of the Mississauga Symphony Orchestra. But before we begin, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick-fire questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Favorite place to eat?
Il Gato Nero in college.
Favorite place to eat in Mississauga?
Scadabush by Square One.
Good answer. Coffee, Tim Hortons, or McDonald's?
Do I have to choose between those two?
You don't have to.
Probably they're on the same. Dark roast Tim Hortons or McDonald's coffee.
iPhone or Android?
Android.
And music, favorite popular music now?
Probably not English. I'd have to go Italian. Moda, new Italian group out, and typical standard Eros Ramazzotti.
Thank you. Those are my quick-fire questions. We'll start with the Quiz the Maestro question right now. First question is by email from Al. He asks, how does classical music fit within modern society?
Good question, Al. In fact, more complicated than it sounds. How do we fit classical music into modern society is probably 2 or 3 part question that I can try to answer. Although very general, I could get specific on your behalf. On one side, we have classical music as a form of education or a tool for education, which nowadays is becoming rare and less common in schools. And of course, we as musicians always try to emphasize that it is vital. Classical music becomes a part of a child's education, as does sports and physical education and math and sciences and English. So there's the education side to classical music. There's also, of course, the side of entertainment. Is it entertainment? Do we attend concerts as patrons, and how do we do that? And is it as important as going to watch sports or community events? And how does that fit into society? And probably the third thing about all of that is, how does it fit into each of our personal lives? Because society here is quite different than where classical music is really the heart of it in Europe. So as Canadians, we're displaced because it's fairly new to us. It's something that's only been around for a few decades, maybe a century, as opposed to 400 or 500 years. The last part behind that is that it becomes individual. I really can't answer that as a society, how does it fit in, except that we work as musicians to make it an integral part of the community here in Mississauga and further abroad throughout Southern Ontario, and of course just by exposure through individuals, youth, community, parents, and of course our patrons. Hope that answered the question. Thanks, Al.
Second question is from Matt via Twitter, and he asks, why is classical music still relevant in 2015?
Thanks for the question, Matt. Classical music has always been relevant, and in fact continues to be so on multiple streams. We had another question very similar to this, that classical music becomes integral part of society through education, by teaching children about history. There's the aspect that, of course, it becomes part of a child's experience and experiential learning. But education aside, it is also part of the fabric of a society that was based on European traditions, as Canadians mostly are. So we try to remind ourselves that it is relevant. But besides all relevancy aside, what is classical music? Classical music is like a very beautiful AAA steak, and pop music is sort of like your McDonald's hamburger. So how is it relevant? Well, it's nice to have a snack once in a while, but your meat and potatoes becomes the majority of the standard, which is classical music. And we try to recreate that here at the Symphony and try to promote it, obviously through questions like these, and make sure that everyone around us reminds themselves, put on some classical music once in a while. It's always a treat.
And I'd rather have that steak, medium rare. Next question is from Arash via Facebook, and he asks, what is the best way to expose children to classical music? examples, movies, performances?
Good question. A vital part of exposing music to children. How do we do that? Begins in the home, or the immediate areas. I mean, in the car when you're driving, and the radio station as your alarm clock, and on your phone, your ringtones, etc. What happens is it's not always so much about what it is you're exposing them to, but how often, frequency, even if it were one little short piece of classical music, but that they are exposed to it often, especially at a young age. They become familiar with it, and they know the ABC song is you can introduce to them by saying it's actually a classical piece of music, and that ties into composers, and then they'll ask questions. They're very inquisitive children. As they get older, it becomes more difficult if it hasn't begun at a younger age. So once they're into their teens, if they haven't been exposed to it, then you just have to do much more of it. And in fact, take them out, take them to the symphony, the opera, which is incredible drama, and they would love to see the scenery of it. And as much as you can, expose them to recordings, live music, DVDs, video, and YouTube now is just absolutely full of classical music, and you can just Google or search through any of the famous composers. But it's a matter of time. Don't stop, don't give up, and just continuously do it with your children and those around you. Keep doing it.